Put her in there.
Oh, we're just on the...
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
How are you this morning? Good, thanks.
I guess for my question, you've spent the past couple of years working with the Grand Prix Sport organization.
1 year.
1 year. With that experience, what did you learn from working with them?
Well, you know what, it was a really rewarding experience on multiple fronts. So their president is a friend of mine, Murray Taves. My son played there his rookie season in the Alberta Junior Hockey League last year in Grand Prairie, and I was able to see him play more last year than I had in his whole life growing up, just because going in different directions in sport. So that was a very rewarding year. We were able to do a lot of good things, I thought, in the community, and wish those guys the best of luck moving forward.
Coming into a coaching position again, taking the past few years of growth, I guess, what are the thoughts you come in with, and what are the goals you have to succeed?
Well, you know, one of the things that was evident to me right away was Peter, the care for the players, right? Everything's about the players. He mentioned it in the press conference. One of the first questions, you know, before this ever fully got to the finish line was asked how many guys they carried, and he said 22. And it was a beautiful thing to hear as a coach, because now the reality is you're going to get everybody to play, right? You don't have a bunch of healthy scratches in the stands. It's a philosophy that I agree with. And then I asked him about 16-year-olds, because 16-year-olds, young guys, in my opinion, need to play. He was the same way. He goes, we're not keeping a 16-year-old unless he can be in our lineup and contribute on a nightly basis. So that was interesting and good to hear. And then from there, we just kind of continued to have talks about philosophy and everything else, and we went from there.
Just get you to square up with them.
Yes.
Bill, just Akeem said that it took you until this past week to reach out, and that was through a third party. Just is that accurate? If so, why did it take this?
Well, I haven't been able to talk to Akeem personally, and I look forward to the day that we're able to do that. And in order to make a proper apology, and you have to be educated enough to do that. So the work I've done through Shades of Humanity and also through Cornell online, I'm more comfortable speaking in the DEI space, and then now it's evolved to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So much more educated in that regard, so more comfortable trying to craft an apology and to have that conversation.
But just in terms of the length, 4 years has passed, just it could have been done earlier, I guess, just sort of...
Well, yeah, you know what though, the work with Shades of Humanity, to be 100% honest with you, I still have some work to do with a psychotherapist. I'm going to be 100% full disclosure. So you have to be ready and be able to have a heartfelt apology, right? And be genuine and come from a place of knowledge, in my opinion.
It's been repeated over and over how you've worked with the humanity group and other groups to get to this point now, but if you're ever at a point where you're coaching a player of color, what are you doing to ensure that mistake with Akeem doesn't happen again?
Well, I would do more communication in advance, more education in advance, and it's obviously been a changing experience, one that's going to allow me to have a platform, I hope, to make some positive changes in that relationship.
Did you have any talks with other players of color about this, or any other execs or anyone of color beyond the organizations you spoke to?
Yes.
What were those conversations like?
They were good. They were very good. You get to, they share their experiences with you, and I'll share a quick story if you don't mind. I don't remember the year exactly. It might have been around 13, 14. I was an assistant coach in the NHL with Detroit. We played an exhibition game in London, Ontario, against Philadelphia, and Wayne Simmons was in the lineup for Philadelphia. I don't know if the game, I don't remember, it was a preseason game. I don't know if it exactly went into a shootout or we just had a shootout, because it was preseason, I know that. But I don't know if it was a tie game that went into a shootout or we just had a shootout because it was preseason hockey and somebody threw an object at Wayne. And everyone at the time where we were sitting, we didn't know what happened. And we thought, well, something just fell out of his pants or, a piece of equipment. And then once we understood what was going on and what happened, it was very disappointing, right, obviously, and your gut and your heart, how you felt for him and how you felt once you knew what had happened. You don't want to see that happen. So if I can take any steps to educate people or to help people make sure they don't put a player or a person in that position, that's what I'd like to do.
And hired pretty late into the
the off season here with main camp starting tomorrow. What are you doing to get prepared just for getting ready to lead this team this year?
Yeah, well, right now the work's all been done by the assistants, and a very unique situation with Matt Anholt being an assistant GM in the organization too. So they've laid out training camp. I haven't done anything with training camp at all. So we've looked at it, we've talked about it briefly. We have it where they're happy, the format of it, and they're going to execute training camp, and then we'll start working on building relationships with our players and going from there. But I haven't had a big impact on training camp. There's a bunch of games being played, 2 a day over the next 3 days, and then a red-white game, and it's an opportunity for me just to observe players and trying to put a name to a face.
And back in Lethbridge, where you had your first head coaching job, just what's it like to be back coaching here in Lethbridge?
Well, like I said earlier, I think it's a wonderful city. I think it's a bit of a hidden gem. The people in the city have had life, since I've been here, friendships that I've maintained, and I look forward to seeing some of those people as we move forward.
Like that. Bill, can you talk a little bit more about some of the work you'll be doing with anti-racism groups, just in the future, and how important that is moving forward with coaching the Hurricanes too?
Yeah, well, it's really important to me. Like the on-ice part is important, but equally to me, the off-ice is as important. So, do we have anything that's set up and ready to go? No. Have we had a few conversations last night about what I'd like to see? For sure. But it's easy to brainstorm and come up with ideas. Now you've got to implement those ideas. So it's something that's a priority for sure, and I look forward to getting in the community and trying to help out.
Do you have a message for players, families, the community as a whole as you step into this role?
Sorry.
Do you have a message for fans, players, their families, and the community as a whole as you step into this role?
Well, it's exciting. We have a meeting tonight for our players and parents. It's an exciting time, and I'll be an open book and accessible, and any questions they can ask.
Just as you head into training camp here, what are your expectations for the season on ice?
Well, you know what? I've seen 2 players play in my life. One at the Max tournament years ago in Calgary. Paul's got listed out of that tournament, I believe. And I've seen the young Doyle, the defenseman, play for Nax when my son was part of the Canadian Sports School Hockey League. So I'm coming in open-minded, and away we go. The guys are excited about the group, and it's up to me and up to the staff to just sit and watch, communicate, and evaluate, and then go from there.
So you've mentioned some of the work that you've done over the last couple of years with anti-racism training and that kind of thing. What are some specific ways that you feel like you've grown since this incident happened?
Well, I can engage in the conversation now. Until you have the education piece and actually understand it, it's hard to engage in those conversations. So with Shades of Humanity it's probably just over a year. And it's been good because when we have our calls and do our stuff, things happen in society that all of a sudden when you reconvene in 2 or 3 weeks, there's other things to talk about that are current, right? There's many examples in sport and outside of sport, but it allows you to think and to reflect and engage in meaningful conversations. People have a hard time having these conversations, right? They're hard conversations. People aren't comfortable. So when you get into the conversation, you know if somebody wants to have an actual conversation about it or if they just touch on the subject and move along, right? You get into the isms. You get into sexism, ageism, racism. You get into all the isms. There's not a lot of conversation about that. You get recommended readings. You read books. You try and educate yourself. And for me, that's going to be ongoing. It has to be ongoing because it's forever changing, right?
So, Bill, you've coached in a multitude of environments, WHL, NHL, over in the KHL and stuff, and you kind of come full circle back to the WHL in Lethbridge, where you started, with the University of Pronghorns and stuff. What lessons have you taken from, all your stints coaching across the world, and now you're back here, and how will you use the lessons that you learned from there to further the team forward?
Yeah, well, you know what? Individually, what happens as you get into coaching, you get up higher ranks, and I shouldn't say to everybody, but definitely happened with me, you get a little bit too one-dimensional, right? You're too focused on the sport that you coach, and you're just worried about doing a good job where you're at to potentially get the opportunity if you're lucky enough to climb the ladder, and you lose track of the real world outside of you a little bit, and things suffer. So for me, it's okay, now there's got to be some balance in that, and as you get older, and your kids grow, you look at it through their perspective, their lens, as they age. So it's a totally different vibe for me coming back at this stage. Like, And Peter knows that. I was very clear, and hey, this is as important to me as the on ice. There's things that are important to me. If we are successful on the ice and fail to produce in the community, I'll be very disappointed. So there's a balance there that we want to strike for sure.
And with you've your years going pro, and now you're coming back to with the players, different ages and stuff. You're going back to players who are in their junior life cycle, looking to develop their further careers. After so many years coaching the pro, is there any different approach that you might take with them?
Well, you know what, the league is totally different, in my opinion. Like when I was last in the league, 07-08, there was two of us with a part-time goalie coach and a GM. That's what we had, and we had a plethora of quality scouts and quality people in the organization. Now all of a sudden we have a third guy on the bench, we have a full-time skills guy, we have a goalie coach, a young guy that we're excited about bringing in. The scouting staff, obviously is very productive here, done a good job over time. But now when you look at the schedule, and the city of Lethbridge has to be commended on this, we have a nice block of time. We have, I think, a 3-hour block. And our guys come in, our young guys come in, and there's a 30-minute skills session every day available to these guys with a skills coach outside of our coaching staff, right? That didn't exist X amount of years ago. So I'm excited about the opportunity to maybe see how that's evolved. So when they talk about the player contract, and Ron can probably answer that, it's standard player contract plus development, right? So we want to develop these guys fully on and off the ice. Our education advisor is second to none, and that's a big piece too. So I look forward to being able to help people with my experiences and kind of guide in that direction, but I know the organization's in real good shape as far as what they offer.
Bill, I guess what can fans expect? What kind of team can the Hurricane be this year under your guidance?
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that right now, not to dodge the question at all. But if you look at the metrics last year, obviously defensive metrics very good. Offensively struggled on the power play a little bit, didn't score as much as we would have liked. So we got to try and find a way to score more goals, right? And I think there's going to be unbelievable growth from what I've been told from the young guys. Just looking at the kids coming back in from the off season, it looks like they're I know they're happy with the amount of time the guys have put in. Guys have been in the gym. Guys are excited about their opportunity, and there's some good young players in our lineup. So it's up to us to help them reach their potential.
And I guess training camp starts tomorrow. I guess what are you looking for? What are you hoping to accomplish this weekend?
Well, I want to get a handle on what we actually have, right? Like the depth in the organization. I know we're very deep on the back end with guys that have already had Western Hockey League experience, so we're deep in that position forward group. I know there's been a couple changes, a trade done here within probably the last 2-3 weeks to add some depth. But it's just coming in with an open mind and just watching players and evaluating players on what you see, and then obviously you'll learn a little bit about the guys as you go and get to develop a relationship with them.
Sorry, one more. There's a player in Carolina that a few years ago accused you of kicking him. The standard has shifted a ton from when you were last behind a hockey bench in this capacity. Just as a motivator, as a leader, how do you think you have to be with this current generation or the new standard?
Yeah, you know what? It's changed for the better, and the standards, everybody's held to the standards. So the way that you avoid those situations is to communicate clear, and that's going to be the key.
Just wanted to know if you could describe your relationship with the team GM. He's mentioned at different times that he's known you for quite some time professionally.
Who's that?
The team GM.
Peter. Yeah, Peter. Sorry. Yeah, no. When I first met Peter, he was, I believe, the first time I met him that I recall, he was coach of the Seattle Thunderbirds. So, we're going back into the 90s. We've coached against each other. He's been a GM of some teams, I'm sure, that I coached against. I vividly remember doing a Hockey Canada high performance clinic with him in Winnipeg. Just a quality man, so that relationship goes back a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
That's such a terrible goalie. Great flex.